All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Mission Garden here at the base of Sentinel Peak or A Mountain in Tucson. My name is Emily. I work here at Mission Garden as the garden supervisor, and I'm really happy that you're here to discuss a very important subject, which is Buffelgrass. And we have the honor of being joined by two wonderful speakers, David Walker and John Schuring. David Walker is a neighborhood advocate for Buffelgrass and also kind of turns lemons into lemonade, incorporating organic materials into building materials such as adobe. And so we'll be hearing from David Walker first, and then we will hear from John Schuring. Both of these individuals are doing excellent work, and I will say that John Schuring has really led the cause and should probably receive some type of medal for the efforts against this invasive species of Buffelgrass in this community and in the Southwest. So without further ado, welcome David Walker.
Thank you, Emily. Thanks for all being here on this Friday morning. Got to stay in this box. So just a little history. I've been here for 25 years, 24 years, 23. And early on, there was efforts and awareness about Buffelgrass on A Mountain and the area. And there were some Buffelgrass picks led by Pima County, and we would go and pick an area and bag it up and try to save all the seeds, and all those would go into a dumpster and then out to the dump. And after a while, these efforts were not necessarily followed up by going back when the new seeds came sprouted up before they seeded again. And so seeds were definitely just getting replanted. And if you pick the grass and get the roots out, quite often you're disturbing the soil and you're creating more of a habitat for these seeds. And that's a problem with a lot of these invasives. They take advantage of the disturbed soil and really can spread like along the roadways and in areas that you might pick it out. And so what I've learned, I don't think we'd have much of a problem here if early on a group of us kept at it. Unfortunately, I was raising a family and wasn't paying attention to the situation as much as I should, but I was paying attention to, hey, look at this, there's this great material, it's miniature bamboo-like that we're just putting in trash bags and taking to the dump. And so I played around with it. I've done some natural building and cob and light straw clay and straw bale. And so I played around with this and made some ornos, some traditional beehive-shaped bread ovens, and it worked great. And instead of breaking up the stuff, you can just use it in its length and dip it in a slip of clay and incorporate it into adobe. And it strengthens the tensile strength of the adobe, which that's what's lacking in adobe is tensile strength. Anyway, John was hosting a little get-together on Tumamoc, and introduced me to the idea that spraying's not so bad, that it's most of the studies show that it's not toxic to animals, including humans, and or very, very low toxicity, and very, very effective. And if you hit it once and go back again and in a timely manner, like before it seeds again, and a few more times, you can really clear an area, like John has demonstrated out at Ironwood National Monument, as well as just up here on A Mountain. But I'm going to show you a few slides and just talk about maybe alternative reasons why we could pick as well as spray. And you can hear John afterwards. So this is just a typical green patch of Buffelgrass that you see around now because there's been so much rain. It's tall and tons of seed heads, and it's ready to dry up for the summer, drop all its seeds, and await the next year. But you can go in an area like this, and when it's still green, you could spray all this. The seeds will still be there and viable, but the main host plant will be gone. Or you can go through and pick it and clear an area and either stack that grass up and rock it, or take it away and use it for another use. The problem with this is you just need to make sure you return and address it before it comes back, because now it's got so much more open space, so much more seed than it originally had when it was getting infested. And so you need to, there is some responsibility to take when you do take it out. So this is just a nice early morning. You can see the sunlight coming from the west or from the east, and it's really a pleasant thing to pick, and it's very satisfying. You can clear an area around these saguaros and barrels and native plants. And Ray and I just picked this area in probably a half hour, and it's very, very effective, especially when there's bigger mature plants. It comes out and clears a lot more quickly than several thousand small plants. Anyway, and then you can maybe take it home. My friend made me this. I had an old backpack, and she made a slip cover for it that can hold. Actually, it can hold another bag full. This is probably 3 bags full of those 50-gallon bags. And so anyway, some of the pros are that you can pick it year-round. You don't have to wait for it to green up, and so you can have volunteer groups that want something to do and get involved and learn. So it could be definitely an educational step, especially locally, where people don't have to drive out to the Desert Museum or way out somewhere. You can have education going on, and volunteer groups come together and learn. A lot of the HOAs in the areas, especially along the foothills, have gathered. They have groups that go up and pick regularly. Effectively, I think some areas are really well picked, and some areas are less so. But there is year-round possibility, and the community involvement, I think, is something that could be utilized to continue. I think A Mountain here, it's a great location, great park. It has been undervalued. Right now, it could use trail maintenance. It could use signage, educational stuff. It could use a lot of erosional control help. And I think something like the invasive grass and getting rid of the grass could be kind of a catalyst for more interest in working on A Mountain and utilizing it as a park. Since COVID, the use of the park has increased, tenfold, I think. And we could build upon that momentum, I think. So also when you pick, it removes the fuel. Depending on when you spray, that stuff is still there. Though you're getting the green leafy matter dies off pretty much. It doesn't have much fuel left in it. But the woody parts of the grass remain for quite a while. So that's a bit of a pro. And you do have potential for harvesting and using for other things. The cons, definitely, it's a lot more labor intensive. When you have a huge field of Buffelgrass, like on the south side of A Mountain, it would take quite a few man hours to go and pick it. Whereas if you have the gravity fed sprayer from up on the road, you can hit an area pretty well. And the other con is the destruction of the soil and the chance for new seeds to get in there and regenerate. So I'm going to show you with our local clay soil here, people have been building adobe building with the mud for thousands of years. And it's really cool to see in some of the desert archaeologic studies all of the different phases of architecture that has been developed along the Santa Cruz River Valley. And ending with the Marana mounds, which are these raised mounds that had really cool Pueblo-like adobe structures on them. So anyway, the mud is excellent here for building. This is a little house I'm just finishing up, just a one-room studio, and the walls are mud and Buffelgrass, continuously laid. I made some bricks and used those, but mostly I formed in place.
Is that on site here?
It's about a half a mile away. Yeah, it'd be cool.
That structure is occupied by Nikki Marshall, who is the person who did all of the paintings. She painted the owl in the kitchen building, and she painted the restrooms. And everybody, if you haven't been in the restrooms, go into both of them to do an art tour, because they're really wonderful. And she's using that for her bedroom and her studio.
So that's, just the art, building with Adobe is really nice because everybody can be involved. It's no further technology. It's just such a basic Adobe technology that we've been doing in humanity throughout the world for thousands of years. And it's free. Little touch-up work. And this is the almost finished structure. And you could build something like this in, a month. So I think that's my presentation. If anybody has any questions, you're welcome to ask. Yes.
Do you do any kind of plastering?
This finish is a plaster of the same mud. Okay, and I'm putting nopal juice to keep it from weathering as easily. Yes.
What's the proportion of Buffelgrass that goes into it too?
So I figure a regular picked bag of, the 30, 50-gallon bags of
It's all
Buffelgrass.
Fluffy,
Yeah.
it's not.
So that goes into about a cubic foot of building.
And do you have to chop it up?
No, the strength is in its length. And so instead of making blocks where you have all these segments and weakness planes, it's a monolithic structure, and with all this grass strengthening it. And so you would be hard pressed to put a bulldozer through this.
And what about the floor in there?
So the floor is going to be a treated mud floor right now. It could be a brick on sand, but right now we're going to just do mud. Yes.
You said a month. Is that just with a team of you, or just a team of 5?
I would say with a team of 4, you kind of want to pace yourself, because you're building layer on a layer, and so you want the first layers to dry out and strengthen before you add another layer. And so you could do about a foot a day on with maybe a 8-hour day.
I see.
With 3-4 people.
But you've got to let it set, dry.
Yeah, you got to let it set in a dry September day. Yeah. It'll set up, and you could do a maybe 8-inch course and go around, and by the time you're back to that course, that's set enough to put another layer on there.
Oh, I see.
And so depending on how many people you have, one of the things we did when I had a couple work crews come and workshops, and I made some forms so people can make bricks, and so they got the feel of working with the clay and the Buffelgrass. I made the bricks, the forms really long to make use of the tensile strength. So they're heavy, and so you need another team to move those around. Yeah.
Well,
yes.
no other internal structure besides the Buffelgrass?
No, it's like miniature rebar. It's
This structure is small enough that you don't need to get it approved as being up to code?
Well,
or-
it's under 200 square feet. And so I wanted to keep it under that just because I wanted to play around with building with it. I've done a couple of different partition walls that are out in the open with tile covers. So I had experience, but my friend Ray is here. He lives across the street. He would love to have a Adobe guest house, an auxiliary dwelling unit in his backyard, right? He lives with his family and it's tight in there. A new grandchild is there and just makes it more intense. And we could build, so I want to work with the city as far as codifying this, because it could be a really unique form of architecture for our area. Because once the Buffelgrass is gone, right, we don't have this, we don't have the material anymore. But we still have Adobe, and Adobe has been used forever. So.
You don't get Buffelgrass plants growing out of the
Well,
wall.
that's the thing. You're getting it. You're dipping it into a really wet slip of clay originally, and then encasing it in all this Adobe. So those seeds are getting moist, and I'm sure they're not viable anymore. You do get some grass growing on the edges, while you're building it. So, yeah, you are isolating them.
And it's, it's still not gone.
Yeah. So yeah. So I don't know if anybody's bagging it up and taking it to the dump. I guess they are. We're going to do it here. But out in the open mountains, Tucson mountains, I went out picking with the Tucson Sonoran Desert Weed Whackers on Wednesday. And we're way up above the Desert Museum, where backpack spraying, you could take, a couple of gallons up there, but it's rocky and you empty that pretty quick and you have to come back down and fill it up. I don't think there's any roads above to bring hoses up. I'll let John talk about that because they've made great strides in using getting the glyphosate into places that have huge infestations. But what was I going? Oh, we usually stack the Buffelgrass and try to keep the root side down and keep on building up where you're trying to enclose as much of the grass heads as possible. And they found that there's not a lot of growth coming from that in years down the line, maybe from the periphery, but underneath most of those seeds are contained. Yes.
I'm curious about the use of the term picking, because I little bit of experience with digging it out.
Yeah. Or pulling it.
Unless it's small and the ground is really damp.
Right.
And then I can pull it out.
Right.
Pull it.
Picking's kind of a polite term. So yeah, no, it's digging, and while it's wet and the roots aren't so deep.
Yeah.
If it's new sprouts, and right now, I mean, this infestation is moving, and so I go on the periphery and I just go pick out the sprouts when the soil's still moist, like after the other day's rain. But once it dries out, it becomes rock-like and it's hard to get, and so you need a little geology pick just to get it out. Once it dries up, a hoe is too wide, and you're disturbing a lot of soil. When you actually want to get down between the roots, you want to pick up right above the roots is the base where the growth takes place. What do you call that part? The crown. The crown. And so all the roots they'll come up with the crown usually, but you want to get the crown and the rest of the grass out. And so a sharp pointed tool gets in between. It depends on the soil too. You can use a mattox if it's sand or dirt, but a sharp, like a geology pick. This one guy that goes out and picks on Wednesdays has developed a couple of tools that are specifically for Buffelgrass and work incredible. So yeah, it is definitely a dig and pull, but not you want to disturb as little soil as possible. And so Ray and I work as a team with a 5-foot bar and just get in the right place and pick it up. And other person pulls the grass back so that they could see where to put the digging bar into, and just pulls up as the other person pries up. And once that front edge is loosened, it just comes up really easily. And like I say, you can pick a big area pretty readily. And so if you've got 10 pairs of people picking, it goes pretty well. There's time for discussion, and it's nice to be out there. So, yes, Dan.
I have a suggestion if the questions are over. And this is a serious suggestion. I think it would be so great when I saw the picture of the guy with the big bag of Buffelgrass on his back. Why not compress that and get a couple of burrows and give them fancy, catchy names and take those burrows out on your Buffelgrass poles and get the press involved. I mean, can you imagine on local TV, and you have these wonderful names for these 2 pet burrows? They might even be able to live at Mission Garden. They're like totally traditional animals to have here, and they would be fabulous for taking out on picks, and it would make the whole event so catchy and so much fun.
Well, that's a good suggestion, but what we need is a use for the Buffelgrass.
Right.
And so that we need that first, because otherwise we come with all the
this
seeds and
Buffelgrass,
trans.
what are you gonna do with it? Yeah.
Exactly. So that's putting the horse before the anyway. So that leads to another that I think we can, and I would personally like to be more involved in outreach, getting groups to understand what's going on and being active. Now that it's getting cooler, and so I've got to try to figure out how I can do that and not work as much, and because I still need to make money. But I think there's great opportunities. So thanks a lot.
So much, David. This is very, very exciting. Before we welcome John Shearing, I just wanted to thank you for sharing with us the work that you're doing. And I do wish to include contact information for David below the video here. As well, I think it's worth noting that reminding that there are some wonderful resources and groups that are working on this in Tucson, the Sonoran Desert Weed Whackers. Also, you can reach out to the Arizona Sonoran Desert Museum. They are organizing quite a few picks, and Native Plant Society, from which John Shearing joins us today. And so there are lots of opportunities to get involved, and we do all need to be aware of this and come together. So let us spread the word about this and recruit our neighborhoods, our clubs. Really quick, I just want to mention that this Saturday here at Mission Garden, we're hosting several groups coming together, Rotary clubs that are environmentally focused, Coverdell Fellows from U of A, the volunteers here at Mission Garden, and we're putting together another big pull event around Mission Garden right at the base of a mountain where there's an infestation. We have also done this similar work with the United Way Days of Caring last year, and we'll repeat that. So this is an ongoing process. So there's lots of opportunity to get involved. It's really the message that I want to share. So without further ado, let us welcome John Shearing from the Native Plant Society, who will tell us about his long-term commitment to eradication of Buffelgrass. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Hello, I'm John Shearing from the Arizona Native Plant Society, and I'm the conservation chair for the state. Just to make a very long story very short, I'm a trained agricultural plant breeder. got a master's here from Arizona and a PhD from Texas A&M, and worked for 8 years with an international research institute, not for profit, and then 19, 20 years for a big agricultural chemical company for profit. And we had a corporate merger, and I had the opportunity to be early retired and come back here to my home in Tucson in 2006. Quickly learned about the threat of Buffelgrass and decided, wait a minute, there's maybe smarter ways to go about this than going out and taking huge groups and digging once in a while. And over time, I've learned from the plant and from the native plants and from experience what works and what doesn't work, how to long-term suppress Buffelgrass over acres, and at the same time do restoration work and bring back native landscapes. And there are many, many examples of this, but we have no time to go into it today. But for an audience like this, I think what's really important is that we take a look at the biology of the plant, okay? Take a look at the Buffelgrass plant. Buffelgrass is a perennial, and it's from tropical Africa. And it's a bunch grass, okay? And so it grows from the base. And it's a perennial, meaning that it can live easily 10 years. And it continues when it's wet and when it's warm enough to regrow from the base. So where is it growing from the base? Well, if you look at the bottom of the stems, what you usually look at are the roots. But what you don't see is there's a layer between the stems and the roots, and it's crown tissue, okay? And when I pass this around, I want you to feel this really hard tissue, okay? And that crown tissue is where the action is. Those are literally stem cells. Those are like undifferentiated stem cells that are in your bone marrow, okay? They're ready to turn into other things, okay? But they're sitting there lurking, ready to go. The difference between these and your bone marrow is that if you want, you know, your bone marrow to turn into blood or an arm or an eye or something, it takes a lot of manipulation, and you have to be very, very, very careful. And for the most part, you can't do it. But with Buffelgrass, all you need is a little bit of this undifferentiated tissue to be sitting in the ground and lurking and waiting for enough moisture and enough warmth to come along, and bingo, it starts growing. So it isn't just the seed, okay, that's spreading Buffelgrass, but it's also crown tissue, okay? So when we physically go in and we dig and we pull, little bits of crown tissue are left in the soil, okay? And for 10 years, there was a lot of effort, and David will tell you all about it, for the most part, led by Ward 1, very valiant people, you know, that went up there and would have these massive digs on top of a mountain, and they dig up all these plants, and they even throw them into roll-offs, you know, and they take them away, and it made everybody really feel good, okay? But by 2016, a number of us from Native Plant Society made the assessment on a mountain that there was no progress. It was all regrowing. And worse than regrowing, it was multiplying, because people had taken digging bars and split the plants and transplanted. And so instead of having one plant here and one plant at that post, you had 10 plants here and 10 plants around that post. The only difference is they were shorter, okay, and not as robust. So I think it's really, really important that we look over our shoulder, you know, in time and realize, wait a minute, what are we doing? You know, that we're getting nice pictures of before and after, you know, of these stacks of plants and all this stuff. But in the end of the day, are we really controlling buffalo? And this year, with the historic monsoon, this year is really going to keep us honest. Because even if you do a massive poll right now, with all the moisture in the ground, 4 to 5 weeks from now, you come back and the stuff's going to be sprouting and heading. Okay? Spraying, same thing. Okay. So buyer beware. Okay, that's one. Spraying, the same thing. Because you can spray and you don't kill all of the crown tissue. You kill a lot of it, but not all of it, and the stuff regrows. So there is no once and done panacea for controlling Buffelgrass. Period. Okay. I mean, we'd like it to be otherwise, but that's it. Okay. Okay, now let's look at another biological fact. These heads are actually flowers. Okay. And if you look carefully with a hand lens at every single flower, you'll see a little pistil inside and you'll see 3 anthers. Okay. And the anthers come out and they shed pollen. Okay. And if you tap one of these during, not quite yet. If you tap one of these during pollination, you'll get clouds of pollen. Okay. And we're seeing this right now. I mean, a lot of these are in flower right now. Okay. Now, they flower from the bottom to the top. And basically, as a rule of thumb in grasses, 28 days after fertilization, you have viable seed. Okay. Now, there may be 5 to 10 days difference between when it starts to flower and it ends on the same head. And there may be 20 days difference on the same plant. The day that that flower, that seed is ripe, bingo, it's gone. It falls off because it's ripe. Why should I sit here? And yet on the same head, there are other seeds that aren't ripe. Okay. And on the same plants, you may have a 20-day difference. But all of the seed that's ripe and ready to go, gone. So you go in there and you bang around with your digging thing, okay? And the seed that isn't already gone is long gone, okay? There is no biological reason, there might be other reasons, but there is no biological reason to put all of this into bags and haul it off to the landfill. You talk about a, what do you call it, an ecological footprint. That's huge. And it makes no biological sense. Okay, but there may be other reasons. So I just don't know them, but you know, do what you want, okay? But this is what's happened. Now, Marcus did a study, a master's study in the Catalinas, and he showed 2 and 2 is 4, that if you lay these guys down, and what he called thatching, the amount of seedlings coming back up is seriously different. Now, these roots aren't going to come back. And as long as the crown is out of the ground, it's not going to reroot. You know, it's not like a cactus that you leave, you know, laying on the ground and then sends out roots. This doesn't do that. Once it's out of the ground, it's gone. It starts to dry. Now, there's one other thing that's happening, and that is people are digging these up and they're putting them into big mounds, and they're taking rocks and piling them and burying them. Now, I have no idea why they're doing that, but there's no biological reason to do that.
So it doesn't blow away, maybe?
I've never seen even dug plants blow away. And even if they blow away, the seed is long gone anyway. So anyway, but what is happening when you're taking all these rocks is you're disturbing habitat for reptiles, for insects, and for, you know, little tiny plants. Anyway, desert life. So anyway, that's kind of the biology that I wanted to share with you. And I'm not criticizing anybody. I'm just saying this is the biological fact, and you know, there's just not a lot of biological reason to be doing the many things that we've been doing with a lot of effort over the years. Now I'm going to pass this around, and this is a plant. You can't see the anthers. One of these two, the anthers may be, this was flowering this morning. Oh, yes, you can see the little stigmas. The little white feathery organs are sticking out of the flowers. And you can look at that. The pollen anthers have already fallen off. But what I want you to do is feel the bottom of the plant and feel the knobby things, okay? And the really hard tissue there, that is the crown. And that is really an aha for a lot of people, okay? Because that's where all the growth happens. And like David says, it's not the roots, okay? So pass that around in this one, okay? That don't divide it down. Okay, great. So
The stigmas were the acceptance.
the stigmas are the female part, okay? And so you have the pistil, and then you have these feathery long stigmas that come up, and they're the ones that receive the pollen. And as soon as the pollen hits them, instead of bright and turgid white, they wither up. Whoop, I don't want any more.
And how fast does that stage go?
28 days. After fertilization, 28 days. What's that? It's across the board. Okay, there's a lot of outcrossing and there's a lot of selfing. Okay, so now let's tell the story about what's happened up on A Mountain. Like I said, in late 2016, a group of us went around on Sentinel Peak and saw all of these transplanted Buffelgrass plants and made the assessment: if we spot spray with herbicide over a long period of time, let's see if we can get this stuff under control. Okay, and so we use the only herbicide that works on Buffelgrass, and that's glyphosate. Okay.
Roundup.
Yep. Well, one of the brand names is Roundup, and basically what happens is that on green tissue, you spray this on the leaves and the stems, and within 3 hours, the leaves absorb the herbicide, and the herbicide's translocated down. Okay? And I say 3 hours, 4 hours, because that is what is called the period of rain fastness. If it rains on you as you're spraying, obviously the herbicide's going to wash off. But if it rains 3 to 4 hours after, you're good to go. Okay. And basically, it takes a long time, typically 10 days, before the plants start yellowing up and dying. Okay. And if you catch it in flowering, for the most part, none of the seed is going to be viable. And the nice thing about spot spraying is that you've got a 3-foot wand and you can spot the bad guys and leave the good guys. That's our mantra. And we've done that over and over and over. And that's the trick. Whether you're digging or you're spraying, you've got to go back over and over and over again, because the stuff is like a zombie. It just keeps coming back, you know, from these crown tissues. And also from the seed load that has been up on Sentinel Peak since, Diana will tell you, since 1996. So you've got a heck of a seed bed up there, a buffalo. You can spray at least 30 times as much area than what you dig. Digs usually involve a huge number of people, like what you're going to have on Saturday. Spraying little commando teams of 4 to 5 people can go in, and Chuck and I were just up there this morning, you know, spot spraying regrowth on Sentinel Peak itself. Okay? So it's very lightweight, actually. So this is the story. Within 4 years of constant, persistent spot spraying, take a drive up to the top of Sentinel Peak this afternoon and take a walk over by the Ramadas. That used to be pure Buffelgrass. Now it's native plants. And better than that, not just native plants, is that if you look closely, there are Foothill Palo Verdes coming up. Baby Foothill Palo Verdes. Foothill Palo Verdes are by far and away, the biggest unsung hero of the Sonora Desert. That is the companion plant of the saguaro. They grow side by side. And I have the pleasure to tell you that because of the fact that we pulled out all this Buffelgrass that had been sucking dry the soil, and the shading that hadn't allowed them to grow, these things are just popping up. And here again, they're just like the Buffelgrass. You know, there's a seed bed of Palo Verdes up there. Now, 3 weeks ago, we were up on top with Tom Van Devender and now Willie Arena. And he's one of the foremost botanists in Southern Arizona. And we did a preliminary list of natives, and we have at least 55 natives up there. This wasn't from a seed mix. This was stuff in situ that was there all the time. Okay. So don't make it, I don't want to oversimplify this. We've only been doing this for 4 years, but believe me, we're going to be following up for at least another 4 years, because like I say, this stuff just keeps coming. And we have to be relentless and keep spraying it. But it's easy peasy. Okay. Yes, Chuck.
I was wondering if you were going to talk about the spray utilization curve here.
Oh, yeah, yeah. At the beginning, you lay down in an area like that about 200 to 300 gallons of herbicide. Okay. By the second year, your plant load is way down, and you only lay down about 100 tons. The third year, you're down to 45. And by the fourth year, you're down to 10. I mean, that's how, I mean, basically, it isn't as if we're lacing the mountain with herbicide. Okay? Because basically, as we go out, the natives are phasing themselves in. Okay. So, what happened now that we've done the 23 acres above the road, and we still have stuff to revisit, as you will see as you look up the road. With this year's amazing monsoon, and we know that the south slope below the road of A Mountain is flammable. 2017, they had on the 4th of July a 17-acre fire that burned up a bunch of saguaros. Since 2017, now this sounds absurd, but it's true. Tucson Fire positions hot shot firemen at 9 o'clock at night with 5-gallon backpacks of water across the slope, so that if a little fire starts, he can run over there and put it out. I mean, it sounds like fake news, but it's true. So we saw this monsoon coming, and we knew that south slope, and actually the east slope too, is just going to light up in Buffelgrass. And we couldn't help ourselves. And we didn't have any money. We didn't have any grants. You know, we've applied for grants, we haven't got them. But we decided, just for the heck of it, let's raise some money. And we started a fundraising campaign on the 2nd of August, explaining that with the money, we're going to be able to hire a professional spray crew to come in and spray, not once, but twice. And by the 2nd of September, we had raised $21,000.
The Native Plant Society.
Yeah, but they were members as well as friends and family. And we're still raising, okay? With that money, we were able to bring in a crew of 5 people, mother-son company from Utah. They sprayed on the 13th of August and got rained out and went home to Utah. And then we had that hiatus of warm weather. And so they came back down and they were spraying for BLM at the same time. And then they sprayed 2 more days, which was last Monday and Tuesday. And they managed to cover 37 acres. Okay. And this is the south side, mind you. And I took this picture yesterday morning, and this is 9 days after spring. And basically this is what it looks like. And you know where the kiosk is? Way over on the west side of A Mountain. That's the area they started and moved east. And so I'm going to pass this around, and all of that tan color is basically thick Buffelgrass. And in 3 more days, if you just drive over to the Pima County Department of Transportation area and take a look up, you'll just see it's all tan. Now that's good news, but this year, by the end of September, there are going to be little heads of Buffelgrass popping up everywhere. Okay. And basically, if we just had left it at spring at once, we would have made some progress. But if all that Buffelgrass that starts popping up again goes to seed, we will take a great leap backwards compared to if we do a 1-2 punch and go in there and wipe it out again. And that's what we're doing. Now, as far as the top of A Mountain, this was a picture in the paper on Sunday where they're announcing the the closure of Sentinel Peak for 2 weeks, okay, to fix the A. But unbeknownst to the photographer, he took or she, I don't know what I can't tell from the name if it's a he or she, was taking a picture of a success story. When you look at this picture, you're going to see a band of Buffelgrass green, okay, Ireland green, and above it, no Buffelgrass. That's native vegetation. And that's the loop road, and everything above the A are natives. And a little apron below the A, same thing. Okay. Okay, now that I've opened up the box about Palo Verdes, because in my opinion, one of the greatest objectives of Buffelgrass control is Foothill Palo Verde restoration. And notice I said Foothill Palo Verde. Most people think Palo Verdes are Palo Verdes. Arizona state tree is Palo Verde, and they are totally ambiguous, and they mix the Foothills Palo Verde with the blue Palo Verde. These are totally two different species with very different characteristics and very different adaptations. Blue Palo Verdes have evolved over time in washes, okay, and on the flanks of washes. And so they're used, not the wet feet, but the damp feet, okay? And they can't tolerate a whole lot of dryness, okay, and stress. Now the blue Palo Verde has very large, well, relatively large leaves. It flowers in the first 2 weeks of April, whereas the Foothills flower typically in the last 2 weeks of April. And unfortunately, it was picked by urban landscapers back in the 1950s as the Palo Verde of choice for urban environments, and has been plugged in way beyond its adaptation. And so last year with our mega drought, we saw blue Palo Verdes crashing and burning all over Tucson. And it's not their fault. They're just in the wrong place. And they do well, you know, where it's nice and wet, like maybe in your ditch out here, okay? Foothill Palo Verdes are by 90% of the Palo Verdes in Arizona are Foothill Palo Verdes. And they're the little unsung heroes that are up on the sides of hills, okay? Another name for Foothill Palo Verdes is little leaf Palo Verde. And it's got little leaves. Okay, microphylla is a species. These love foothills. Over the last 13 years, I have planted these things like mad from seed. And I can tell you, you get 90% success of establishment on slopes than you do on straight ground. I have no idea why, okay? But these tolerate drought. And all you need to do is walk out here to the embankment by the road outside your west wall of Mission Gardens, and you'll see blue Palo Verdes that are falling apart. And you'll see Foothills Palo Verdes that are smiling. Okay, so please be aware of that. And as you do your landscaping around Mission Garden and within Mission Garden, you might keep that in mind. But one last point about Palo Verdes. We've got a bad guy. It's a weedy. weedy Palo Verde from Mexico. It's called Mexican Palo Verde. Okay, and it has long, strappy leaves, and it grows literally like a weed, and it's kind of nice. Somebody thought it was nice right outside your south entrance. You know, they trimmed it up, you know, and making it an ornamental. But this thing makes, now I'm going to exaggerate, about 500,000 seed, and all 500,000 of them germinate. And they spread all over the neighborhoods of Tucson along the roadsides. And they're a damn weed, okay? So keep that in mind. I'm going to pass these 2 Palo Verdes around. They're a little bit stupid, but it's well worth taking a look because it's something that's well worth knowing.
Can you tell the difference, right? It sprouts.
What's that?
How soon after it sprouts?
Immediately, because you get these long, strappy leaves. Yeah.
And the Mexican Palo Verdes grow all over the A Mountain landfill.
These, landfill, they could be those. I've also got a number of other grasses up here, native and invasive, but let's not take time in the presentation. Are there any questions or comments? Yes. My ears are old now.
Do you think a combination maybe of spraying some of the material out and setting it back so that when it roots up?
Okay, the last thing you want to do is cutting it back because, and ADOT does this. Mowing, cutting, sends little hormones down into the crown tissue and they just go crazy. And they, you know, and they just want to go to seed. So they send up little tillers and make little, they make little seed heads and they go to seed. Now, ADOT often has the intention of going in there and mowing and then following up with spraying, but then some emergency comes up and it doesn't get sprayed. And I see Tucson city workers weed whacking Buffelgrass. So anyway, no, you don't want to do that.
I just wanted to restate John's comment that if you do an area, don't fight off more area, go back and hit that same area again, so that you control that area.
That's right.
Instead of trying to do more than come back.
Yes, John.
I was thinking, you know, if people want to go out and pull, go back afterwards with the spray because you're going to use a relatively trivial amount of spray. And you don't have the big plants.
Right.
Right. So, you know, you could pull to get the big ones out and then spray on top of that.
And that's what I did in this spot that I collected the grass for. And others, but I went back. John called me up and said, help out on the mountain. I should get up also spray the area with pick. And just little sprouts. And when it's sprout, you don't need as much concentration on the thing. And it goes quick. And you can cover a lot of block of plants. So that area that I did spray, and I had another guy come and help me. It's free of grass. I had to go back and did it again, but the growing season this season is going, and I had to go back a couple times. And then I've also just picked out some of the stuff after rain once the ground is soft. And that area is really clear. The natives come up, Calver is coming up. But the area that I didn't go back after picking.
But the reality of group dynamics of these massive polls is that you get a lot of energy and a lot of people to go out and do a lot of work for 3 or 4 hours and put things in bags, and you get pictures after and pictures before, and you go away. And the reality is you don't get the follow-up, the timely follow-up that is needed. And no matter what you do, don't bite off more than you can chew, and follow up. And by following up, I'm talking 10 years. Okay, we've been spraying the restoration site at the Watermans for 10 years. This is the 11th year. And I was beating my chest. Oh, we won. And we were down to 5 plants per acre last year. And now, with this flood event, rain event, I mean, we have plants that have been, escaped convicts that have been hiding out inside girdle bush plants that are popping out. So, I mean, it's don't get arrogant about this. This Buffelgrass will make you more humble than you've ever thought you could be.
John, so the let's say you go up, you guys check them up there this morning. You get, how many plants do you think you and a leading question is, don't you think it would be this is effective if the group going high and say we're going to go sweep this area and just go take those plants.
Okay, first of all, this was on very rocky terrain. Okay, up on that south slope of the A mountain itself. And digging between rocks, as you know, is very, very tedious. Okay. And you would have been totally worn out. And I would say we probably sprayed 10 times as much what you could have covered.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But that's on really rocky soil, unstable. But that's what's the reality of this morning.
And another thing is collecting and bagging. That's a whole another amount of effort that if you're gonna dig, lay the plants down like John was saying, and then since you're gonna come back and spray on top of it anyway, so the few seeds or bits of crown that get away from it, you can come back and pick them up with a relatively trivial amount of chemicals. But when you're spraying the mature plants, you want to cover the foliage pretty much. That takes a bit more.
So I would just like to kind of reiterate something that you said, John, like that with the spraying that you've been doing here.
Maybe you ought to take that off so it can be heard.
With the spraying you've been doing, and then in a relatively short amount of time, seeing a lot of native plants coming back. So, I mean, I too initially kind of was afraid to learn about the Roundup that was being sprayed. But can you talk just for a moment about that, what that demonstrates to us, and how somebody that might be fearful of the use of that chemical getting into our environment, what the impacts are?
And does it does the glyphosate last if you're using it in an adobe structure? Is the glyphosate still alive? If it's been
Okay, first of all, and I know an awful lot about the herbicide industry. I mean, I worked in it for 19 years. Glyphosate was first approved by the EPA 48 years ago. It has become, the problem is it's too good of a chemical to compete against. And that's why it has lasted for 48 years. And companies have been going out of business because they couldn't compete against it. Why is it so good? It's profiles. Okay? Its efficacy profile, its environmental profile, and its safety profile. Those are the 3 pillars that you evaluate herbicides on. Efficacy, it is non-selective, and so no matter what you spray, is going to get the herbicide and it's going to be effective. Okay? So if you spot spray, You're going to spray what you get, not what you don't, what you don't spray. It translocates into the plant. So it doesn't just give you the cosmetics of dying and turning yellow, but it actually goes down into the plant and it works down into the crown. Okay. And it is exclusively a post-emergence spray, meaning that it only works on green tissue, live tissue. And if it's stressed, it doesn't work that well. There is absolutely no pre-emergent activity, meaning that it doesn't persist in the soil, that it doesn't move in the soil, and that it's not going to affect any plants around it that are not sprayed that are green. And within a matter of hours, basically, it's metabolized by the plant. Okay. When it hits the soil, totally inactive. It's only active, biologically active in green tissue. So that's efficacy. Okay. And environmental. They have studied this until the cows come home, 48 years. And believe me, competitors have been trying to find flaws. And they've been trying to take down, and Greenpeace and everybody else have been trying to take it down because it's too popular of a herbicide. It is literally the most studied herbicide in history. There is no other herbicide, including the triazenes, that have lasted this long. And it has been studied by those that are pro-glyphosate and those that are totally anti-glyphosate. If there had been an issue, with fish toxicity or bird toxicity or whatever, and that issue was confirmed, for sure, it's going to come to light. Okay? There is an issue with the surfactant with amphibians. And so you only use aquatic versions of glyphosate when you spray around water where you have amphibians. Okay? So when we work in the streams and canyons of the Catalinas, we don't use straight glyphosate. We use aquatic glyphosate. And we spray right next to the water. And every year we get tadpoles going crazy. Why? Because we sprayed out all the invasives, we're shading them, didn't allow them to come up and develop. Okay, so that's environmental. In terms of the safety, the same thing. Chemical after chemical after chemical goes down because rats, pregnant rats have malformed fetuses and this sort of thing. And it shows up in the milk or this, that, and the other. And there have been a number of studies that have been anecdotal and small that have been picked up by trial lawyers. Okay, and there have been jury trials in California. Okay, and they've awarded a lot of money to people. And for the most part, these are people that were dousing themselves in the chemical and not using it according to the label at all. But even if they were dousing themselves, even at those doses, it's never been proven. But because of the public concerns, it's like all the concern about mRNA vaccines, the scientific community says, wait a minute, these are safe until proven otherwise. As far as glyphosate is concerned, the European commissions, the American commissions, EPA, and they've studied this over and over again because they get all kinds of pressure from the public. They're saying, hey guys, according to the data, this is safe. Okay, so 48 years and counting. Maybe something will come up, I don't know. But I'm going to go by the scientific consensus rather than a jury decision in San Francisco. That's all there is to it. So yes,
Then you have to kind of weigh in the cost of not spraying Buffelgrass.
yeah, I mean, as far as Buffelgrass is concerned, you know, a lot of people are going to alternatives to glyphosate, like glufosinate. Glufosinate is not a translocational herbicide. So it sits there and burns the leaves. But guess what? All those crown tissues are going nuts. Okay. So yes, there's a lot of people that have wishful thinking.
Well, I mean, the environmental cost
Yeah.
of leaving Buffelgrass.
Glyphosate is the only one that works on Buffelgrass and fountain grass, I might add. So don't use it. What are we going to do? Pick our nose? And this year, we are going to see an explosion in the city of Tucson, like we've never seen before, especially south of Providence. And I wrote to the mayor and council and all of the wards about what was needed to be done. And they've been sitting on their hands, which is fine. I mean, that's their, you know, they're concerned about COVID and everything else. But in the meantime, we are looking at a giant issue that's going to stand up and just walk at us over the next couple of years. Go ahead.
See, it doesn't work as well when the plant is stressed.
That's correct.
What do you mean by that?
Well, okay, the herbicide needs to translocate, okay? And it needs to translocate through tissues and cells that are healthy, okay? And they have to be healthy for them to keep their juices flowing, so to speak. When they're stressed, they don't have a lot of juices. And so, you know, it's kind of like when you're really, really thirsty, I mean, you can't do it. And that's the case.
Stress with drought?
Yes. That's what I meant. I'm sorry, I wasn't.
Okay.
And it starts to dry.
Yeah, or you know, sometimes in the middle of September, like starting now,
Yeah.
you can get 3 weeks of just no rain, and so they'll sit there and wither.
So we got a bunch of questions. The first one is about laying the Buffelgrass
Patch it, yeah,
plant down and having it completely shaded.
right.
I want to know if that's effective. And the other thing is, I work with a group in Mexico on a reserve where we're trying to prevent the spread of Buffelgrass, and we found that it mostly is on roadsides.
That's correct.
And it moves out from the roadside.
That's correct.
And so the fear and AMLO, the president of Mexico, is about to declare Roundup completely illegal, and it won't be used in Mexico anymore. And you go out and it's sold in every single feed store. And if you drive down the highway to Guaymas, you'll see people out there gathering the
Yep.
seed and putting it in bags to sell it. It's just like so popular because you can graze 4 times many bedded cattle on a pasture of Buffelgrass than you can on a pasture of native grasses. So it's really hard. to
That's
fight it
because
down there.
they have basically decimated their native pastures.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah, the whole road from Nogales.
but just to be
Guaymas.
clear, Mexico is not banning straight away. They are phasing it out
Phasing it out.
by 2004.
Yeah.
And that decision is going to hurt them in the worst way.
Well, anyway, my question is that what we have been told down there is the best way to get rid of it is to have cattle like super heavy grazing. And then after you take the cattle off, you go in and use, because all the dead parts of the plant, the ones that you were asking about, have withered up and been consumed. So you've only got like new little sprouts coming up. That is when you go in and spray. So my question is that effective? And is the laying down of the dead or dying Buffelgrass, does it have to be full? Does it have to be full before you lay it down, or can you just like lay down a living?
Okay,
kind
first of all,
dried out plant?
roadways, okay, are usually built up like on a causeway, okay? And so you will have a shoulder,
Mhm.
and then you'll have a little ditch.
Right.
And so that ditch is basically collecting water. And so you have a little mini drainage.
Right, yeah.
Okay, you've got a watershed.
Right.
And so basically that's why you have such lush growth of buffelgrass along the roads. And unless you consistently spray the stuff and keep after it, forget it. You can graze all day, but it's the follow-up and the consistency afterwards. And especially if that area is going to keep being watered off the road, because the road sheds water, and that's your watershed. And you have this wonderful wet area for the buffelgrass to grow and develop. And yes, roads are by far the most dangerous vector of taking buffelgrass long distances across the countryside.
Laying it down. Yeah,
Laying it down, but along roadsides, I'm not sure that's going to help much.
And when you lay it down, does it have to be cold and dead, or can it just be semi-dead?
Oh, no. If you have your crown in the soil, it's not going to help at all.
Okay, so
You have to take it out, and the crowns have to be high and dry.
Okay, and then leave it there in order to shade out.
Chuck,
I believe you made some progress talking to ADOT, right?
it's ADOT is anything but consistent across districts and across years. I don't want to comment further.
I have a question.
Yes.
What do you think about bagging the buffelgrass temporarily until it's really, really dead?
Why?
And instead of putting it in the landfill, just because of the seed heads and the
But the seed heads, anything that is viable, you see, is shattered and gone.
okay.
I mean, the seed heads that you see have no seed in them.
Like these
No.
seed heads right here. They
No,
don't,
well, this is flowering here, but I mean, we'll go out and I'll show you.
okay.
But basically, by the time you've shook this plant up and you've dug it, they're gone. They're gone. I mean, I see no biological reason for bagging. There may be other reasons, and somebody's got to tell you that.
Is it grass that you have on the table there? Is that baby buffelgrass?
No,
To the left of
these are two, and they're on the perimeter. This is barnyard grass, and it's out in your ditch that goes around the south there, and it's from the Middle East or something, Turkey or something, and it's a common weed across the United States, from the East Coast across to California, and it just grows in wet areas, and so out here in your ditch, it's all over the place, but it doesn't spread, so I wouldn't even worry about it. This is our friend Lehman's love grass. And this was brought in by the Soil Conservation Service at the same time as buffelgrass. And this is taken over Cochise County. And it was actually seeded by ADOT along Arizona roads. And this is an issue.
And cows don't like it.
And
They
cows
eat
don't
all
like
the
it.
other grasses before they.
And in spite of all the hullabaloo that's been made about the bighorn fire and buffelgrass, this was the major culprit. So, yeah, no, those are natives. And basically, you're going to see a lot of it out there. This is feather finger grass. I get it all mixed up. Is this finger feathered grass or feather finger grass? And I looked it up last night to make sure, and this is feather finger grass. Okay, and it also grows in wet spots, and it's a native. And so when you're out there digging, Be good to this guy. That's okay. And this is green Sprangle top, same thing. And if you want afterwards, we can go take a look at these. But you've also got this gorgeous, gorgeous native out there on the northwest side. And I've even seen some growing here in the garden, and I'm delighted to see it. This is Plains Lovegrass. And this is a native, and this is just pretty enough to put in your face. But it's a perfectly good native. So whenever you see it, be good to it. Oh, yeah, no, it's a good one. And your cattle like that, Diana. Go ahead.
I just want to say thank you so very much, Don, for sharing everything that you have with us today.
Welcome.
And thank you for your years of dedication and persistence on this very important issue. So let's all give him a round of applause.